The curse of the Carver kiss. Never heard of her. Today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be sure to, wherever you're listening, subscribe so we can, in fact, prove outside of what the sports are doing on the court or on the field that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's dive into it. It's a Friday. It's a feel-good Friday. Things are up and up for the Cyclones, that's for sure. The Cyclones bring home the victory over the Iowa Hawkeyes in Thursday night's battle in Carver. And this is a win that I feel like is signature. And we'll kind of break down more of that as we go about this episode. In the middle segment, I want to talk about the MVP or MVPs of this game. And then to round it all off, I want to take a look at this team as a macro of view and kind of see, do we have what it takes to finally break through the Sweet 16 kind of barrier we've been held to? Now, to take a look at the game itself, I mentioned that Carver-Hawkeye kiss curse. I don't know exactly how we're going to frame that, but I don't think it really matters because it is officially gone. It's been 10 years since the Cyclones won in Carver. It's been 10 years since the football and the men's basketball program both beat Iowa in the same year. And yet here we are, 2024, we're back, baby. It's officially a Cyclone state. I don't know if you can make the argument anymore that it's an Iowa state. Well, is it Iowa State? Iowa State? Or not really sure how that works. Cyclone State works a lot better, in my opinion. This game, though, did not start in a way that I thought it was going to end with us claiming the state as a Cyclone state. Things didn't look good early. We got down to, I think it was the biggest deficit we've had this season. I want to say it was like 13 points. At that point, I was starting to kind of peer through the fingers, if you will, kind of like, oh man, this is getting kind of rough. And that's what I said, before this game was Iowa State is a very, very good basketball team, but I am worried that in a rivalry game of this sort, playing on the road as well, that this could be a bit of an issue. I always say that rivalry games will be played close, and I don't think this one was an exception. Iowa State goes into the first half. I think they were down, I want to say 7. I have the box score up here. But it was, 7 points, 37-44. And honestly, that first half, it was ugly. It really was. We were not playing our best basketball by any means. And the biggest takeaway I had from that half was our defense is just atrocious right now, on top of the fact that Iowa can't seem to miss. Don't love that. Don't love that. Iowa was just hitting from everywhere. Our closeout defense, I thought up until this point, had been really, really solid, but I saw a lot of overcommits, which led to a lot of drive and kickouts. That was Iowa's offense, in my opinion, that whole first half. Drive, kick out, drive, kick out, drive, kick out, and they were making them. So it wasn't really a big deal. They were able to do that, and because of our overcommits and therefore having to recommit from a bad position, if you run that essential play, if you will, but the concept multiple times, somebody is going to be caught out of position, and Iowa was left with quite a few open threes. Iowa State tried answering, but I think we were 1 of 10 at one point in this game from beyond the arc. And it's going to be tough to win games that way. That's just kind of the nature of it. You have to score points to win. And mathematically speaking, the 3 ball, you get more points that way. 3 is worth more than 2. And then if you go deeper, 1 for 3 from 3 points gets you more points than 1 for 2 from inside the arc. 1 of 3, that's 3 points. 1 of 2, that's 50%, but still only 2 points. And Iowa State just couldn't get anything going from beyond the arc. But I will say I'm proud of the way that the Iowa State Cyclones held their own in the first half and didn't let things get too crazy out of hand. They still had hints of that Otzelberger basketball type of approach to the game, trying to make the most of turnovers, had a couple fast break points. Overall, it was really solid, but things obviously heated up in the second half as Iowa State did win it 89-80, and they outscored. Therefore, you can do the math, but they outscored the Hawkeyes in the second half 52-36. I don't know, is that good? I mean, scoring more points than the opponent is always a good thing, but I mean, The numbers don't necessarily tell the full story here because when you look at the tale of the two halves, you're like, okay, Iowa State didn't come out very hot. Iowa did. Then in the second half, things got a little bit better, and the Cyclones won. Things didn't really get a lot better until the final, what I always call quarter, the last 10 minutes of this game. You could probably even say the last 6 or 7 minutes. Iowa State didn't have their first lead until 3 minutes and 5 seconds left. I think it was Heisey that had a nice little layup in there to take the lead. And we didn't really turn back from that point, which is what I like to see. They didn't keep it real close to go up. I think it was 74-72. So then 89, that's 15 points. And Iowa scored like 8 more. So like a 15-8 run. That's math on the fly. And like I've said many times before, I am not a math major. So regardless, though, you go up by 2 with 3 minutes left. You end up winning by 9. I'll take it any day of the week, twice on Sundays, and honestly, twice a day. I love the Cyclones team, and I love how they play basketball. This was, in my opinion, probably a C- level game for the Cyclones. Didn't shoot well. We had some great offensive plays, the way that we moved about the floor, but really it was not a good game for the Cyclones at all. And I think Iowa played a solid game. I think they came out really hot. And granted, that's not necessarily what indicates a good game because you can just get hot or get cold at any given point. I do think that's true. But the way that they were playing and the ferocity in which they ran around the floor, it was notable. And it was certainly, I don't think it caught the Cyclones off guard, but it was just something that the Cyclones had to adjust to. And it took quite a bit of time for that to happen. I mean, I'm going to get into the players and what they did more kind of in this second segment here coming up. But as a team, things just looked sloppy early, and they got pulled together there in the last couple minutes. And that's what I like about this team, which is kind of where I'm going in the third segment as well. But really the drive and the belief in the system, I guess, which has kind of been the MO of Cyclone athletics, in the last couple of years. But it's impressive from this team. And I think we have all the pieces we need to make a decent run as well. And then to really to make a comeback win like that, though, that's what's impressive to me because, you can look really good. It's fun to play when you're winning. It is in any game ever. I mean, even checkers, right? Checkers is more fun when you have more pieces on the board than your opponent. You got all the kings all over, and it's like, okay, well, what do I want to do? This is just, I'm going to win this game. It doesn't really matter what I do. But do you still have what it takes when you've only got one king left and you're facing a full army of black little opponent pieces there? I'm taking red because we're the Cyclones, obviously, and red is my favorite color. So that's what I saw from the Cyclones here. They were dealt a rough hand. They were given a 2-7 in poker, if you will, and they were still able to find a way to come away with the win. And there were a couple of huge key players in that win. I'm going to break them down right here after this, and I will also name an MVP, in my opinion, for this game. Coming up right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, the ticketing app that does it all. That is for sure. Let me pull up this banner. Boom. Gametime has it all. I love getting my tickets through Gametime. Iowa State will be playing Omaha this weekend, and I'm probably going to be getting a ticket through Gametime. Couple key features here that really I take to heart and love. Number one, being able to see the seat from the app in which you purchase the ticket is great. Instead of getting there, showing up, looking at the little graph, and you're like, oh, I'm not exactly sure what I've got in store for this ticket, and you don't necessarily love the seat. Technically, it looks good on the little chart where you picked it, but you didn't get an actual view. Maybe there's something obstructing the view, a banner hanging or something weird. You didn't see it coming. Gametime's got you covered there. They also have the all-in-one ticketing feature. This feature allows you to basically include the fees in the price of the tickets before you go to checkout. I love this. I can't do math. We've seen it on this show countless times. I don't have to with this feature. I can literally just look at the price. Do I want to pay that? Yes or no? Bang. That's going to be the final price. I'm a big fan of that for sure. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, let's get deeper into this game. Instead of looking at things from a total view, just looking at all of the things that kind of happened in there, let's highlight the players for the Cyclones that made a big difference in this game. There's going to be a few that stand out more than the rest. I've got probably 5 here. And one I'll start with, it's for a reason you probably wouldn't expect. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's break it down. Number one, I'm going to go Keyshawn Gilbert. Very interesting here. Only had 9 points. We've seen great basketball out of Keyshawn Gilbert over the last couple games. And, this was no exception. Don't let the 9 points fool you. He had one of the most nasty, sick, unbelievable body contorting layups in which he jumped through 2 Iowa defenders, gave it a little bit of jelly, looked like the Jumpman logo with his legs spread out wide, hung in the air longer than a feather falling in a vacuum chamber, and just laid it in. It was unbelievable. His ability to drive the hoop and make plays of that nature, I think, are second to none. But to be fair, he only did have 9 points. And before I move into more individual players, I wanted to highlight Gilbert's performance because this is an example of what I've been saying about this team. They find a way to win. They aren't necessarily going to need 25 or 30 points from Gilbert. There's other guys on the floor that can step up, do their job, and elevate the whole team. So, yes, Gilbert, unbelievable player. But 9 points, it's just not as many as he's had in the past. And I wanted to highlight, yes, great player, great plays, but the team as a whole, that one really stood out to me. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about Lipsy, kind of going up in points here, which is a coincidence. The Lipsy performance, he had 11, and to me, this was an example of veteran play. He came, he saw, he conquered. Really, that's kind of the best way to put his performance into words. He stepped up as a veteran, I guess, leader on this team and guided the Cyclones to the promised land. He hasn't been putting up huge point totals this season, but 11 points here is more than his last 2 games. I don't think combined, but it is close. And it's just leadership. So if you want to take a leadership perspective, MVP, I would go Lipsy. I would. There's a couple other guys on the floor that had similar type performances, I guess, like Momcilovic. But I think Lipsy is kind of the face of Cyclone basketball, and I think he stepped up in a way that might not have showed up on the score sheet as much as it did as a leader there. Just a great ball player on the court, period. Next up, I want to go Joshua Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is just kind of in my head right now for some reason. Jay Jefferson. 19 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists. 3 assists away from a triple-double for the big man. And this acquisition by the Cyclones is proving early to be a big one. This game wasn't necessarily won by Jefferson, but he was that steady heartbeat throughout the game that kept the Cyclones in it, was making offensive assist plays, obviously getting the ball into the hoop for a total of 19 points, 10 rebounds, 5 offensive, 5 defensive. I think, if you want to go came, saw, conquered for Lipsy, steady heartbeat is, in my opinion, the best way to describe Jefferson in this game. And you need one of those. Does your heart work if it's not beating? I guess that classifies it as not working, which becomes an issue for the whole organism that is the human body. Same thing with the Cyclones. If you don't have that heartbeat at the center of things, keeping things trucking along, things are going to go off the rails quite quickly. I don't have his first and second half points here, but just the way that I saw the game, from a first-person perspective, he was a key pivotal part in what I talked about in the first segment, in which we didn't let things get out of hand in that first half. He obviously had a few dishes in there and some points. It felt to me, this is a complete vibe check, if you will, that whenever we really needed one, Jefferson could get us one. And that's an absolutely huge quality and or trait to possess and to use, not only from his perspective, but from the team, the ability to hey, they're going on a run right now. We need to get one. Okay, we need to just stop the bleeding a little bit, keep it sort of close, get it to Jefferson. He'll put a move on a guy, maybe find someone open. Boom, bam, pow, we got 2. We can start to kind of get this wheel moving again in the right direction. Jefferson definitely on my MVP watch list. But I think I've got 2 that kind of stand out amongst the rest. Nate Heisey, number 0 for the Cyclones. I don't know what the best way to explain this would be, but it's kind of like, when you're pulling up to Thanksgiving and you weren't really on the text chain, so you don't know what's at the table, but your aunt pulls up and she's got the sweet potato, what, a casserole? I don't know if it's a casserole, but the sweet potato with the marshmallows on top, and you were worried about it because everybody knows that this is one of the best dishes at Thanksgiving dinner, but your aunt's always there. She's always in the right place at the right time with I guess it's not a dessert, but that's not what we're here to talk about, okay? Nate Heise was in the right spot at the right time this entire game. Obviously had the layup to put the Cyclones ahead. Excuse me. Late in this game, and the score sheet isn't going to scream anything crazy here for Heise. I've got it pulled up right here, and I've got 6 rebounds, 10 points, and an assist. Looking at that, it's like, okay, that's nothing wild. I don't love it. I don't hate it. But instead, it's kind of that pillar you can lean on. Same thing with Jefferson, the ability to just look his way and know that he will be where he is supposed to be at all times. Great defensive presence as well, something I haven't really mentioned up until this point. We've looked a lot at the offense, but Heise doing his job on both ends of the floor. Big fan, but I think it really is going to inevitably go to, drum roll please, Curtis Jones, number 5, 6th man of the year. If it's not him, I don't know who it would be. This guy came out on the floor and just seemed to essentially magnetize the ball to his hand, release the ball, turn off the magnets from his hand, then somehow telepathically turn on the magnets inside of the rim, and therefore the ball would just beautifully arc its way in and make that sweet, sweet sound through the net. I mean, I was a big fan of everything he did out there, and he was kind of the electricity that powered this team, in my opinion, to the win. You want to look early in the game. I don't have a time mark for you, but I do know shot clock winding down, drive in from Lipsy, not there. Kick out to the corner, booted up top, not a little bit of a pass that's off the mark. So Jones has to get the little dribble to get possession of it, and from the logo drains it from 3. Electric, needed it, especially in a half in which we did not shoot well from 3. To take a look at his total, I mean, he had 23 points. I don't think he had any assists and maybe like 1 rebound, but tonight he was a point getter for the Cyclones. What I've said ad nauseum at this point, this team will find a way to win. Somebody will step up. Tonight, in my opinion, it's between really Jefferson, Heise, and Curtis Jones for that 3. I'll give it to Jones because of that pop, that electricity factor that he brought to the team, in my opinion. I don't think you can really recreate that anywhere else. And honestly, Twitter is just going insane with this guy, and I don't blame him to be kind of the piece that brings home the CyHawk trophy in a year in which we beat Iowa on that last-second field goal in football. First time we win in Carver since 2014. I also saw we had lost the last 4 games there by an average of 19 points a game. Wasn't particularly close. I don't know if we held a lead in the second half of any of those games. That's why I think that this game, it was a bit of a defining win. It was an ugly win, but the win still goes in the win column nonetheless. Like, that number does go up by 1 now. Doesn't matter if we win by a point. Doesn't matter if we win by a million. Doesn't matter if we come back or if we hold a lead the whole time. To me, this was, obviously a win in the win column, but a signature win at that when we did not play our best basketball. The question now is, if we're not playing our best basketball and we still beat Iowa in this way and garner what I would call a signature win, does this team have what it takes to bring home the Nets in April, to win the Natty? We'll talk about that right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action in America's number 1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. I know the Cyclones, we've talked quite a bit about the Pop-Tart Bowl of the Squad Show this week. If you didn't catch that, go check that out. But 1.5-point dogs. If you give the Cyclones some points, I am going to take it every single time. They covered tonight or last night by the time this airs against the Hawkeyes. Take the Cyclones every time. They're always going to cover, in my opinion. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just go to FanDuel.com to join today. you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. I'm a big picture guy, okay? Here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I try my best to try to stay as realistic as I can. And sometimes that is a tall task. That's a hard thing to ask because I can get so locked in on week to week in football or game to game in basketball, depending on the time of year. Sometimes we just have to zoom it out and take a look. Beginning of season to end of season, where are the Cyclones going to be? We look really good right now. Can we bring it all home? Yes, I think so. I think this is the best, probably top 3 Cyclone basketball teams ever assembled. We were good last year. I thought that we had a chance to make the Final Four, the Illini, and then obviously we would have gone to face the Huskies in UConn after that game had we won. Those guys had other plans, okay, and that's fine. That's sometimes you need to have a loss to bounce back, to build this team, to understand where our weaknesses, where can we capitalize and get better. I think this is a perfect example of that because this team right now is simply unbelievable in more ways than one. We've seen them put up quite a few points, 100 to be exact, against Jackson State. And we've seen them gut out wins now against a rival, an opponent that is the Hawkeyes. I think that this team is built from the foundation up, which is always going to be important. If a team has 1 or 2 guys that is basically the key to winning, they have to go for 25 or more, and then they'll get some help from their supporting cast. That's, in my opinion, a recipe for disaster. That is a ticket one way to a tournament loss. Now, that doesn't always happen for sure. Those guys can stay hot because they are officially him. That's certainly possible. But I know I personally would rather have a team that's built on 7, 8, 9 guys that are all able to go and pick up 20 or more for you if that is the situation that the opponent is giving them. They can, one guy can certainly pop off. We've got studs all across the floor, and we have defensive dudes to make plays on that side as well. So it's not to say that we don't have one guy who can do it all, right? We've seen Gilbert make a lot of noise. We just tonight or yesterday saw Curtis Jones go for 23 as a 6th man. So it's not that we can't. I just think that the way that this team is built is to withstand the storm. If a opponent is like, all right, you know what? This game we are going to lock down Jefferson. We just don't want him to win this game for the Cyclones. What can we do to stop him entirely? Okay, the Cyclones. We haven't talked about it yet, but the combination between Jefferson and Deshaun Jackson is magical. It is absolutely amazing to watch. If you haven't seen it, you need to check it out. Those two are like poetry in motion down there on the blocks near the baseline. Okay, that's, in my opinion, how that goes. But if they shut down Jefferson, okay, now Deshaun Jackson, maybe season opening. Maybe we take a look towards Milan Momcilovic. I mean, there's winners all over this floor. And on top of that, I think it really comes down to just the way that this team is coached and the way that this team operates. It didn't look good early, I don't want to get too caught up on one game as the defining factor for if the Cyclones can win the national title or not. And we'll have this conversation many more times before the year is up. Okay, so I am going to try to highlight some performances here. The way that game started, down 7, Iowa couldn't miss. Iowa State couldn't hit the rim if it was 100 feet wide. It was rough, but the defensive showing, kept us in it, as well as a few key plays here and there. Iowa State, basically, in my opinion, the way I watched it was did enough to keep it close enough to where we can, in fact, come back in the second half. I don't know what was said at halftime. I'd love a tape of that so I can just play that every morning before I get, in the shower or brush my teeth or whatever. But I have to imagine it was something along the lines of, this is Cyclone basketball. We are gonna, face this a few times. We need to sharpen up the defense. The shots will start falling. You guys are dogs. Let's just go out there, play our best basketball. Rivalry game. We expected this to be a close one. We expected this to be loud. We expected this to be something we have to work for. Let's not get too crazy here and just go out and play Cyclone basketball. And that's exactly what happened. Like I said before, though, the first 10, 15 minutes of that second half weren't perfect. It's not like all of a sudden we just flipped a switch and the Cyclones had everything they could ever ask for, which is almost another point to what I'm trying to say here. But eventually the shots started falling. Eventually the defense, that's not really an eventual thing, but we found a way to slow down Iowa. The last 7 minutes, the Hawkeyes couldn't really get anything going offensively. It was kind of, okay, we've played our basketball game up until this point. Let's just see if we can hold them off. And that's not the way that it went. The Cyclones were able to capitalize on that. I guess I don't want to say aura shift because that makes me sound like I'm 15, but that dynamic shift in that game where I think the Cyclones played whistle to whistle. We played tough the entire time. That wasn't, I thought we played almost too tough, too fast or rough, I guess, in the first half. I thought we were over pursuing assignments. We were getting almost like too physical in some instances. We just had to control our movements a little bit more, and that's what happened in the second half. This team, I talked with a few, I guess, pundits before and some actual coaches as well before the season. The main concern was, yes, this team can play defense. We know that. But can they score? You have to win, or you have to score points to win. And Iowa State has always been a team that has to win on the defensive side of the floor by a considerable margin. So if they can win by, 68 with a 68-point performance or a 72-point performance. And sometimes that is tough to do. If the other team's shooting lights out, there's just nothing you could do about that. And all of a sudden, you find yourself down 12 and you don't have any point getters. You don't have anyone who you can take down to the block and automatically get two, or anyone from outside that's going to shoot at a considerable percentage. I don't think that that's the case with this team, however. I think that this team has been built now with Jefferson, the notable addition, and then guys like Lipsy, the facilitator, like Nate Heisey, the defensive guy that can prevent the other team from getting easy buckets, or Curtis Jones, who can step in and play. I don't even know how many minutes he played here. I'll pull it up because it doesn't take that long to find. I've got number 5 had 23 points on 33 minutes. So he actually played a considerable amount of this game. He can step up, not expecting to, he's not a starter. He just comes in and he plays his ball. And if that's what the Cyclones want to piggyback off of, boom, all of a sudden you find yourself in a game. I like the way that this team can go get points. I like the way that this team operates. I've said that before in this episode. I just think that this team is very good inside and out from a mentality standpoint as well. This is a big win for them. They'll use this going forward. We'll play some tough opponents in the Big 12 because the Big 12 is a great conference to play basketball in, and I can't wait to see it. This was a great out-of-conference win for the Cyclones. We bring home the CyHawk trophy. It is now, in fact, a Cyclone State, from all, I guess, really just football and basketball. But it means a lot to this team. I know it, and I know that they'll use this and propel themselves forward. Quick reminder, it's a Cyclone State per the sports, but if you want to help prove that once and for all, be sure to subscribe to the show. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening, being here every single day. You guys make the world go around. I couldn't appreciate you enough. Until next time, Cyclone fans, you know the line. Sayonara.